This is part one of a two-part podcast.
I'm Edward Norton. No, not that one, the other one, and I love pies. No, not that kind, the other kind. Hermes is an old-school forum packed full of friendly people who occasionally give out a slice of pie. You'll never forget your first slice of pie. It made me feel so good, I had to buy a whole pie so I could share the love. Oh, and there's apples too. Sign up at permies.com to join in the world of homesteading and permaculture, and you too might get a slice of pie.
I guess Andres says, oh, we're live. Look at that. We did it. We're here.
All right. So we're going to try to answer questions today. And let's start. I want to start with the people that are here. And I think they just typed the stuff into the chatty chat and then we'll see what's there. But I do think it's fair to say something about how we did record a really long webinar where we carefully polished all the pages and everything that we were going to do. I mean, I think we had like 80 pages of extremely researched and well documented what we wanted to talk about. It was and images and stuff like that. So I thought it was really good. At the same time, ever since we put that out, there have been some people that have had some questions, and it's like, oh, right, we didn't talk about that in that giant thing, and so now is the time to kind of tap into that. So I kind of feel like I don't know, has it been a year and a half or so since we put that out, or maybe over a year?
Probably.
I kind of I made a list of some possible points that I'd like to touch on that we didn't touch on thoroughly enough in that webinar that we did. And apparently it broke some things because we went, I think, 3.5 hours for that.
Yeah.
And It turns out there's some limitations around the 3-hour mark for some stuff. So I think we're moving on. Now, so I don't see any questions in the chatty chat just yet, just chatty chats. Hey, Alan.
Howdy.
Did you see our 3-hour long thing when we did that? I don't remember. I don't think
You'll need to be a little more specific than thing.
Okay.
I just joined, so I don't know what the thing is we're discussing.
Okay. We did a 3+ hour long webinar on hugelkultur. And my guess is that you have not seen that, but I'm sure that you know what we talked about even without having seen it.
I can probably make some strong guesses.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and start with some of the questions that are inside the forums. One of which, so we have a thread for this event, and there's one with a bunch of images on it from a guy named Ron Elk. I don't know, is he on here in the chatty chat? Is he watching right now? Just bought 10 acres. So, Andreas, can we show this guy's, image, his post? Just bought 10 acres 6 months ago, Western Washington. We have a field, about 4 acres. Now there's 5, forested. I'm now working on my first hugelkultur. It's 25L by 5W. So I'm going to assume this is feet, 25 feet. Long and 5 feet wide, hoping for at least 5 feet high. I wish to strongly advocate for something at least 7 feet high. I already got it up to about 2 feet. I've got lots of thinning to do in the forest to add to the hugelkultur. Okay, so he's got a lot of wood. Base was started with logs from the neighbor. When layering, can I add the grass clippings with the dirt to fill in cavities? Okay, I want to start right here. I've got just that alone. First of all, a lot of people, I believe, build hugelkultur in a way that makes me want to facepalm, and that's where they stack up a whole bunch of wood And then once they have this nice big wood stack, then they start covering it in dirt. And I know I want to say that will not work, but I feel like I need to qualify it. I don't think that will work unless you live in some kind of rainforest. Basically they'll end up with a bunch of air between the logs underneath. And, granted, it'll end up being a relatively moist space, but, I don't think growies will like it with it having that much air in it.
So, by the way, do we know where this is located? What exact climate are we in here?
He's in Western Washington.
Okay.
Yeah, all he says is Western Washington. Have we seen any sign of him in the chatty chats?
Not yet.
Okay. So, all he says is Western Washington. I'm looking at the picture, but parts of Western Washington are a rainforest, a technical rainforest, and parts of Western Washington are not so much.
He says he's got a high water table, so I'm guessing he's on the western wetland side.
Okay. So, all right. The key is I believe that a good standard recipe is going to be put some wood down, and you're going to leave some gaps between the wood, but put some wood down to be where you want to build this thing. Cover it with soil. When you can't see any more wood, put more wood down, and cover that with soil. And then repeat until the whole thing is 7 feet tall or taller. And so that is the opposite of what I think most people do. I see. So YouTube wants me to watch all these videos. Look at this guy making the hugelkultures. He's so happy. And it's kind of like, and I believe nearly every video I've ever seen makes me frustrated. And Andreas has been moving that book project forward. And I was like, we got to write that book because of all the crazy. Okay, so.
So, Paul, if I'm getting it, what you're saying is if I were trying to make a lasagna, the structure is the noodles, right? If I put down all the layers of noodles and then decided to come back and try to put the sauce and the cheese and everything on top and think that magically it's all going to get down between all the noodles at that moment, it's probably not going to happen. I've got to put down a layer of noodles and then down a layer of sauce and cheese and then another layer of noodles, and I got to layer it up as I go so that I get the right mix and consistency from top to bottom.
I think that what you have just said is indeed true, and I want you to never say lasagna in the same sentence as hugelkultur ever again. So there's a whole style of gardening called lasagna gardening.
I'm aware, yes.
And I hate it. And Toby Hemingway was doing it, and I lectured him for an hour on never do that again. And I believe he conceded to my points. And you might think that is impossible because Toby Hemingway is brilliant and wonderful and lovely and great. And
also, he can no longer defend himself. Well,
I did it while he was alive. I did it at, okay. I went and saw it, and I'm standing there with him, and I'm doing, so he, and I guess, yeah, he can't stand up right now and say, Paul's so full of shit. He can't, nothing like that. So, but.
Of course, Toby would have never said that. He was quite a gentleman, so he was much more.
I'm going to gently push back, Paul.
Yes, exactly.
So what do you have against lasagna, Paul? Because there's some people here who are like, but I've seen the organic guys who layer the cardboard, compost.
Geez, you just opened up a whole other.
No, make it short. I'm just saying, because people are not going to take you at
Please
value.
Never use cardboard or newspaper in your horticultural endeavors. Never. if you're, yeah, there's fools all over the internet saying to do it. And if they want to poison themselves, let them. Just because somebody is poisoning themselves and saying you should try it too, doesn't mean you should. Lasagna gardening. Let's cut to the number one point that convinced Toby Hemingway that I said was, if you have a layer in your lasagna gardening that has like a lot of green, a lot of lawn clippings or weeds or the whole. I mean, the thing is that with lasagna gardening, they try to make it very homogeneous. Everything is the same. But when you have a very green layer or a high nitrogen layer, maybe it's manures, and you've got this high nitrogen layer, what's going to happen is it's going to effectively glee. It's going to become a water impermeable layer. So the rain will come from above and hit this high nitrogen layer and then run off. It doesn't go into the stuff underneath. The stuff underneath it becomes bone dry.
And that layer goes anaerobic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. It goes damn nasty in so many different ways.
Yep.
It's a bad idea.
People love it because they want to kill grass, and they want to kill it now so that it can be a garden this year. And I understand their drive to do that, but they're like forsaking the long-term health of the patch.
Right. I think smothering grass is good, but doing it with poison is bad. And cardboard and newspaper, poison.
So when we've had to, take out sod, we'll get a sod cutter and flip the sod.
Oh,
right?
That's a good one.
So, and that puts the roots up in the air and and it effectively smothers it, but it allows it to decompose in place, right? So
that sounds like a much better way.
Yeah, so it's no nasties. The other thing I would say on cardboard is that using cardboard today is a very different proposition than using cardboard 40 years ago. And the reason is that 40 years ago, cardboard was a lot of wood pulp and adhesive. And so, yes, you could talk about the nastinesses of the adhesive, but today, a lot of cardboard products are not just that anymore. They might have additives to them to keep them from tearing apart if they get wet. And so the next thing you know, they got PFAS compounds and everything else they put into the cardboard. Here's a pizza box. Guess what we did? We just loaded it with these PFAS and compounds to keep the grease from soaking into the cardboard. And so, yeah, if you think that cardboard today is just wood pulp with a little adhesive to hold it together, well, maybe in some cases, but in other cases, it can have all kinds of other stuff in it that you do not expect. Same thing is true now for even paper towels. Used to be paper towels were mostly wood pulp. Today, it's like, it doesn't tear apart when it gets wet. And you're like, well, how'd you do that? And you're like, well, our chemical engineers decided to have lots of fun. And
I'm gonna take what Alan said and make it even nastier, and then watch as Alan nods his head as I say these things. A lot of these companies that manufacture cardboard or newspaper in a lot of different formats, or other paper goods, they have been bought by a company right next door that is having trouble getting rid of their industrial waste.
Mm-hmm.
And some of that stuff is very, very ugly. It needs to be disposed of properly. But it turns out that they come up with a cheap excuse to be an additive into the cardboard to get rid of it. And now it's your problem. And they don't have to label it or tell anybody or anything like that. It's just mysteriously taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And now you've just taken that industrial waste and worked it into your horticultural endeavors. Please observe Alan nodding his head up and down as I'm saying these horrible things.
It's way cheaper for them. I mean, if you look at what it takes to properly dispose of certain toxic chemical compounds, it's a big expense. And if you can hide it somewhere else or push it into another process where you don't have to do that, it saves them a lot of money.
So I want to say that as you're building a hugelkultur and you got your woody bits down and you put a bunch of soil on that and some more woody bits and some more soil, what you want is to make it so that there's not much in the way of air gaps in there. Having a few air gaps isn't so bad. You don't need to pack it. You don't need to go and oh no, there's an air gap, I got to go fill it. The problem comes when you have when your whole hugelkultur is built and you've got more than 40% air gaps in there. That's too much, and you need the moisture to be able to wick throughout. Mm-hmm. And the roots, while they like having some air gaps once in a while, when the roots get to a pocket that's a real big air gap, they don't like that. That does not jive with them unless, of course, you're in a rainforest.
Yep.
And it's but if a lot of the work that we're trying to do is in deserty conditions. And so it's not a lot of, so, all right, when talking about this, okay, basis are the logs from there. When layering, can I add the grass clippings with the dirt to fill in the cavities? All right. I don't know if Alan's ever heard this. I know that both Beau and Samantha have heard me say this many times. I advocate for something that I call splotches. And what I want in the end is to have diversity on the inside of the hugelkultur. If you're going to mix your clippings in, then you end up with homogeneity. So if everything's kind of spread out the same over your whole hugelkultur, I don't want that. For a buffet of reasons. I can go on and on. What I want is diversity. So if you've got some lawn clippings, put it in there as a blob, a splotchy blob. There are some, and over there is some, and over there is some. And then as you build up with soils and logs, and you got other materials you want to work in, specifically high nitrogen materials, do it in blobs. Oh, you got a bucket of kitchen scraps? Blorp in one blob, maybe two blobs. And at some point in time, about halfway up, I want to suggest add a bucket of really high quality soil from your best garden, but try to keep it contiguous, something about the size of a basketball, but don't turn it up and mix it up and blend it. Try to keep it in the same configuration it was in when you took it out of the garden, and then carefully place it inside of your new hugelkultur. I call this a bioseed. And so basically all the biological activity that's inside this basketball of soil is going to expand and grow throughout your hugelkultur. But if you churn it and bust it up, it'll expose it to air and kill most of the life in that blob. So
I'm going to agree with that, Paul, because let's make it explicit. One of the things is, and on the garden soil, I'm going to push back on the other thing, but the garden soil, when you disturb it too much, the fungal hyphae get all pulled apart and the fungi get unhappy, and that disturbance takes the fungal bacterial ratio and just completely messes it up when you tear it apart and turn it inside out. So keeping the soil contiguous preserves the fungal component, and so I agree with that. My one pushback on keeping the grass clippings or the food too blobby, if you keep it too blobby, then it can again go anaerobic. So I don't like, and fresh cut grass clippings can do that, and it can grow actinobacteria and anaerobics. So I like heterogeneity. I'm going to agree with you on that. I would not keep it completely blob of food scraps, all one big blob together. I would spread it out just a little bit and mix in just enough, carbon-y thing to it to keep it from becoming an anaerobic bomb in the middle of the bed.
Right. I respect your concern on that.
Mm-hmm.
and at the same time allow me to undo your concerns through the power of magic. See, nothing up my sleeves. Mm-hmm. And all I got is the English language. Here we go. If it's a blob, about the size of a basketball or smaller of grass clippings or kitchen scraps or something like that, I'm also concerned about it going anaerobic, but I also believe it's small enough that before it has a chance to go anaerobic, the life in the soil is going to break it up and spread it around enough and aerate it enough. Unless, of course, you've got a blob that's much larger than a basketball. But if you're talking about something that's about a basketball or smaller, it'll be fine. And the thing I want to avoid is the thing about the lasagna gardening, like spreading it out. And what I've learned over the years of talking to people about this is that if I start to say spread it out, they instantly go for a lasagna garden. Mm-hmm. And it's like, so what I'm trying to do is to say, instead, keep it in something about the size of a basketball. Now, of course, once you put it in there and you start to bury it inside of your system, it's not going to remain basketball shaped for very long. It's going to get kind of pancaked a bit. Yeah. And once it's pancaked, the different life in the soil is going to go after it and keep it and prevent it from going anaerobic, as well as the fact that it's not a huge blob.
So I'm going to push back on your pushback because we've looked at this inside of compost piles where we're looking at the life with a microscope. And so the reason I'm saying I don't like that idea is if you do the same thing, like even small blobs like this inside of your compost pile, they can go anaerobic in a couple of hours. So I'm going to throw something at you that we're suspecting now that I think is kind of interesting. It's impossible to keep all of your soil in real life from going anaerobic all the time. It's going to happen. And so we've worked with a couple different people who've been experimenting with this. And one of the things we say is, well, get all the great aerobic biology going all through whatever you're doing, hugelkultur, garden, whatever, right? And that works really, really well. But what we've noticed is that there are beneficial anaerobic microorganisms, and if you get them going in your soil, including in hugelkultur, what happens is when some little bit or piece of your soil goes anaerobic, they spring to life and they start doing their magic, and they competitively exclude all the really bad anaerobic things, right? So what we've seen is that whereas getting great aerobic organisms going throughout your soil, which is what you're trying to do with your garden soil coming over, you're seeding that biology in there. If you also seed in beneficial anaerobes, then it gets even better. It's like, if good aerobics are here, then good aerobics plus beneficial anaerobes goes up to here, because what happens is when that inevitable little bit of anaerobic stuff happens here, there, and yonder, now you got beneficial anaerobes that dominate that condition instead of really nasty guys. So just throw that in there as a thought.
I think you just supported my pushback. But
well, what I was going to say is if you would seed in beneficial anaerobes, then maybe it would be interesting. It would be an interesting experiment to try. And that's one of the whole things is where do you get those beneficial anaerobes? And you can do stuff like maybe, some of the anaerobic methods like bokashi has a lot of beneficial anaerobes in it. So throw some bokashi in there,
Well, okay, when we put the material in, it's probably going to be quite oxygenated as it goes in. Mm-hmm. And so then you're saying as quickly as 2 hours, I would have to say, what were the conditions for that material? I would have to say that if you're putting in lawn clippings, I would have to say it's not going to go anaerobic for a day. If you kind of put in some kitchen scraps and you kind of go splurtity, splort, that might be shorter, but not 2 hours. And so,
but you don't have the heat of an active compost pile, so it's going to go slower.
So I kind of think that, and plus since it's small,
yep,
it's going to really struggle to get any heat going at all.
Mm-hmm.
But the greater goal is if we have diversity inside of our hugelkultur, then when we grow diversity outside of our hugelkultur, some growies are going to be like, oh, I found a high nitrogen spot, nom, 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 nom.
Yep.
And I'm quoting the great philosopher Cookie Monster. Other growies are going to get some roots down there and discover this high nitrogen spot and go, ow, 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 no. And it's like, so now what happens is that different species that have different needs are all growing next to each other, and their root exudates of one are feeding the roots of another.
Mm-hmm.
And vice versa.
Yep.
And so this exchange, this rich exchange, has been encouraged by having diversity in the soil. So our diversities are going to be a buffet of different kinds of things. And so high nitrogen, low nitrogen, maybe high potassium, low potassium, high potash, low potash, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And high iron, low iron, high boron, low boron, high calcium, low calcium. And so there's going to be these splotches. And then in time, there will also be some spots that are going to be very, very moist and very, very dry. And it's based on things, this, that, and the other thing. Diversity is what I want. Diversity all over the place. Yeah. And that's why
that whole thing of diversity in plant species is very important. If you've noticed, there's been a lot of move over the last decade in cover crop seeds to go from, I just planted vetch or whatever as to a cover crop mix now. And you can you're starting to see a lot of very carefully designed 8-10 species cover crop mixes. And the reason is, and they're from different families, because as you pointed out, the root exudates actually are complementary. And when you get a certain level of diversity of plant families and of root exudates, then all of a sudden this grows a diversity of microbial life. And this interesting thing happens. We talked about it when I teach the soil classes, which is called multi-species quorum sensing. And it's this really interesting dynamic where, in a lot of biology, we talked about like single species quorum sensing, where when a single strain of bacteria is putting out an exudate, and when enough of them get there, they realize that there's a bunch of them and they can do something new, like form a biofilm, right? In other words, it flips a switch genetically, and they start doing new things they weren't doing before because there's enough of them to successfully do that as a group. And biofilms are one of those things that trigger on quorum sensing. Well, as they got into this, they realized that there was this thing called multi-species quorum sensing, where when enough diversity gets going, everybody says, hey, the party's all here. There's enough of us and enough diversity. We can now start doing whole new things that we weren't doing before because they're possible. And when that regime cuts in, now all of a sudden, all kinds of beneficial relationships start forming and things start happening. And so we now understand the scientific basis for why this level of diversity is actually doing things that you don't see at lower levels of diversity.
I would like to expand on that a little bit. So I'm going to expand on it instead of push back. I'm going to expand on what you just said and say, I believe that there are benefits that we have not yet documented. In fact, I would say for each thing in the world of biology that we have documented, I'll bet there's at least 1,000 times more that we have not yet documented. Yeah. And the bottom line is that for a lot of stuff, that diversity is, I kind of feel like when you talk about a permaculture flavor of horticulture, permaculture gardening would be the thing I would be advocating for. I think that this is kind of what we're talking about. We want to have diversity, but of course there are some species that don't play well with this.
Yep.
And and then there are some species where the only way it works is you got to kind of have a bit of a monocrop. But one could go past that and argue, okay, the stuff that is allelopathic and poisons the plants around it, not a permaculture plant. We're just going to either not have it or it's going to be way the hell over there. And then the stuff that is wind pollinated, and so it needs to be in a monocrop of sorts. One could argue that we shouldn't be growing that stuff anyway. And I turn to Mark Shepard's book, Restoration Agriculture. I think he makes some really excellent points about grains and specifically. But
hi, this is Mark. There are a lot of reasons to get angry these days, but I prefer to focus on the positive things that we each can do to make this world a better place. The book, Building a Better World in Your Backyard, Instead of Being Angry at Bad Guys, is a great resource for just that. Instead of throwing my arms up in frustration at governments or big corporations, there's a list of ideas that we each can tackle to affect change. Information about this book and other resources can be found at permies.com.
I think diversity, it's even better than what we've been able to document so far. And as you were talking about mixes, I'm thinking of Gabe Brown's stuff. But then Gabe Brown's stuff tends to be a lot of annuals. Yep. And I kind of prefer, I kind of feel like restoration agriculture was a bit of a wake-up call. Like, wow, how did we ever forget this? You know, and it's like, why was I doing Three Sisters all this time? That was dumb, wasn't it? And
the thing to remember, of course, is that the annuals tend to be more related to the bacteria. They tend to have more interactions with the bacteria as you move towards mid-succession perennials, such as, and a lot of our vegetable garden crops are closer to mid-succession. They have relationships with both the bacteria and the fungi. And they like soil that has sort of a biomass balance-ish. And so low disturbance, which every time you disturb, you tend to reduce the fungal dominance, right? So something that doesn't get disturbed a lot. And, of course, wood tends to be fungal food, right? So when you're putting a lot of wood into a hugel, you are putting a lot of fungal food in there. And so you will, if you don't disturb the soil, then you will tend to eventually, especially after the first year or two, you will start to see fungi in the soil as a pretty, pretty good amount of biomass. And now all of a sudden that hugel is going to probably be better for growing perennials than for really early succession annuals.
Okay, I want to move on to the next thing that this guy said, Ron. He says, also we have a high water table, 30 to 60 feet down. Is it still viable to dig down a foot or two to add the height of the hugelkultur? Yes, it's a great idea. And looking at the picture that we're looking at here, I'm a little concerned that this is a little on contour, but the land is so flat, and if the hugelkultur is not much bigger than that, I think it's all right. I would prefer to see a hugelkultur that's kind of going up and downhill in a fairly wiggly shape, like as I don't know how to say that any better, a curvy shape. An organic shape as opposed to a straight line. So, but I think a lot of people read up on swales and what are the benefits of swales, and then they read up on hugelkultur and they read up on lasagna gardening, and they're kind of like, I'm going to get a three-fer. I'm going to do all three. And it's like, no, please don't do that. I think that swales are great for very hot climates, tropical, subtropical, and of course we talked about lasagna. Just ignore lasagna gardening, please. Just put it out of your mind. And so now we're down to just hugelkultur, and I think we're doing it in a cold climate. And the key is what we want to do is to try to get our hugelkultures in such a way that we can extend our growing season through a couple of very simple things. And so if you've got if your hugelkulture is kind of, and this is the above view, they kind of have a little bit of a swirly to them, then I think that's going to be better because you're going to have diversity and sun harvesting amongst many other things. But then if you've got a curve in your hugelkultur, again, from the above view, and you've got another hugelkultur over here that kind of interlocks, then when the wind is blowing over your hugelkultures, it can't get down in between them. And I think that's going to be a great season extender, because if the wind can't get down in between, and it looks like in this field, there's a whole bunch of trees far away, which means that your hugelkultur is going to be under attack from the wind, because those trees are too far away to help get the wind to go over your hugelkultures. So, I generally up and hill down, kind of a squirrely shape, and interlocking squirrely shapes. So that way it keeps the wind out. Wind is cooling and desiccating.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I don't think if the water table is 30 to 60 feet down, I'm not going to worry about it. In fact, I would say that if you dug down 3 feet and you had some trees that were like close to the bottom of where you dug, something with a taproot, maybe started from seed, maybe it'll find that water and it'll become a giant tree and share water with all of its buddies.
Yeah, he says that's a high water table. I grew up on coastal Florida, and that's... We could go in the backyard with a shovel and dig down to the water table. I mean, it's like, nah, I don't think of that as a high water table.
Once set up, we plan on making another hugelkultur to make a somewhat D shape without connecting the two. Okay. I think when you do the curved shape, I would avoid having that curve pointed uphill, because if the curve faces uphill, you will be making a frost pocket, and by having the wiggly downhill hugelkultur, that's going to allow your frost mass to move on downhill without disturbing your stuff. But if you make I guess if it's going to be a disconnected D, it's kind of like, I suppose you could look at it as a letter I and a letter C together, sort of, kind of, not really, but sort of. And so, but there's a little bit of slope to this land, it looks like. And so I wouldn't want the cupped part facing uphill. Let's see, the next part is, I have a downed cedar tree I'm somewhat planning to use as the base. I know from the Hugelkultur Smackdown, lots of info, video, that cedar is rot resistant. I think it's going to be more than that. Growies do not like cedar, and there's a lot of reasons why. Cedar contains 4 allelopathic elements that are in the wood. Mm-hmm. And that's why it rots so very slowly. And so, and also why when you go to a cedar grove, you don't see much other stuff growing in the cedar grove. The cedar is very good at killing off its competition. Now, all conifers have these 4 allelopathic agents. However, like fir or pine, they have a lot less. Mm-hmm. And so you can use fir or pine inside of your hugelkulturs. They will present the exact same problem, but it's something where the upsides are much bigger than the downsides. But cedar's going to be the downsides are probably bigger than the upsides, and it's probably not going to do the things that you want. Now, on the other hand, if you go to a rainforest, you'll see that cedar is a very dominant species there, and you'll see cedar behaving as a nurse log. But how old is that dead cedar? I would guess a couple hundred years old. It's been sitting there rotting away ever so slowly to be a nurse log, and it's still there in a rainforest.
Yep.
So I would say do not put cedar inside of your hugelkultur. In fact, I wouldn't want it within 10 feet of your hugelkultur. I have used black locust as a border on hugelkultur in the past, but black locust is pretty inert. The growies won't put roots into it, but it doesn't exactly actively poison your growies like cedar does.
So yeah, the thing to remember is pretty much every tree species has to have some antifungal compounds, so they don't get eaten alive by the decomposing fungi in the soil, right? And so what happens is when the tree dies, it stops producing new versions of that compound, and that compound breaks down. And different trees, those compounds break down different rates. It's part of the reason they tell you if you're going to inoculate oak with mushrooms to grow mushrooms, wait when you've harvested the tree, wait a couple weeks before you inoculate the wood, because it takes a couple weeks for the oak antifungal compounds to break down. So you don't want to stick all your fungal spores in there while it's like, just still alive and has all those antifungal compounds in it. So you let it wait a couple weeks. But the wetter environment that a tree has to live in, typically the more aggressive it has to be in antifungal compounds. And so a lot of really wet rainforesty, especially tropical trees where there's constant attack, have a lot of antifungal compounds, will break down slowly and will resist they'll resist that, so they become less desirable to go into a hugelkultur.
All right, I think we covered Ron's stuff here pretty good. And there's a thing on the screen now. Good morning. Does orientation of hugelkultur matter, generally speaking, north, south, east, west? I would say orientation matters a lot, just not orientation to the sun, because whatever shape you make it and whatever orientation you end up with, portions of it will be facing every direction of the sun. But this is what you want. You're going to end up with diversity. So on your here on the northern hemisphere, the north side is going to be cooler. It'll have less sun than the south side. And so some plants are going to like it more and some plants are going to like it less. And some plants are going to like sunrise more than sunset. And it's like, so that it'll all sort itself out in time all over your hugelkultur. So this seems to be a big thing that a lot of people get really stuck on. How do I make it do a wavy thing downhill and simultaneously orient it to the sun the way I'm thinking I want it oriented to the sun? And it's like, leave the sun out of it. The sun will take care of all of its own stuff on its own. Don't worry about the sun. Any of you got any thoughts about sun orientation?
Well, I think it's really interesting how much you can have the south-facing, dry, hot areas, and at the same time have a beautiful, wet, north-facing side. You have completely different stuff growing, totally different microclimate, and on the same hugel, within a few feet of each other. You have a nice, protected place to be out of the hot sun, and then have a baking side on the other side. It's really, really cool.
I think most food plants appreciate half-day sun more than full-day sun. But there are some species that will thrive under hotter conditions.
Mm-hmm.
And so having diversity is it. Plus the next thing is like you might have it baking on one side, but the roots might be able to reach over to the other side where it's a little cooler.
Yeah, and where it can stay nice and moist. Especially a bigger plant with longer roots can really get into those nutrients and that moisture that's on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
We've had rhubarb last year that stayed with us through the fall. And I'm used to rhubarb going dormant in the summer, but I think that was a big part of it. It continued to find water deep into the hugelkultur. But then the rhubarbs that we had that were growing on a very sunny southern exposure spot, and we hadn't built the soil there yet, those rhubarbs did go dormant in the summer. But the rest of them just kept pumping out rhubarb all year long.
So cool.
It also changes the flavor, whether you're on a sunny side or a shady side. A lot of people report that the flavor on the northern side tends to be sweeter,
mm-hmm.
and then the flavors on the hotter side tend to be spicier.
Yeah. Now remember, Paul, you're up at a higher latitude, and when we do design classes, I make everybody say sunward or poleward, because if you're in the southern hemisphere, it flips. So, okay. But then if you're in the tropics, and I want to talk at some point before I have to get off here in a while about how hugelkultures perform in different climate zones.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And because it's like it changes a lot. But like in the tropics, you get the sun almost overhead, which means you get sun down on, you can get the sun down, coming down on both sides because the sun's mostly overhead, so you have variations. The further you are from the equator, the more you have this really high polarity between the sunward side and the poleward side of a hugel as it's moving around. And that sinuosity you're talking about helps to create even further microclimates, including partial day shade, as the sun is coming up, or partial day shade from maybe the late afternoon hot sun, things of that nature.
So on this call, we have Andreas, who I think is not too terribly far away from the equator. And when he tells me stories of how today is hot or cold, it's like, oh, that's just like, oh, he's freezing to death. It's 68 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yes.
And it's like, it's the coldest it's been all year. But if Andreas can pop
He's
himself
watching
in
out
here,
for those cross pockets there, Paul.
If Andreas can pop himself into our little collection of talking heads, I think that, hey, Andreas, why is it that you don't want to have hugelkultur where you are?
Hello. Yes, because the wood would decompose very, very fast, and then the mount would go flat. Like I would say that like a 7 feet tall hugelkultur would disappear in like a year and a half tops.
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah. So where Andreas is, what's brilliant and smart and worth all the time and pollution and all that stuff tied to it is biochar. Biochar is brilliant where Andreas is. And where I am in Montana, it's like, why would I want to ever do biochar? I can do it like it's 10 times easier and cleaner to do hugelkultur. So, this kind of conversation reminds me of the Poisonwood Bible. Alan, I'm sure you've read the Poisonwood Bible.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guessing that Beau and Samantha, you have not read the Poisonwood Bible?
No.
I got the Cliff's Notes from my wife. Does that count?
And so in the Poisonwood Bible, basically a guy from Georgia goes to Africa and learns that gardening is it's too different. It is just a bad idea to do Georgia gardening in Africa. I saved you the whole book. And I mean, he goes into details about how comical it is to try, but, and there's, of course, more to the book and other things, but blah, blah, blah.
When we're teaching design patterning, one of the very first things I tell everybody is if you don't know when you shouldn't use a tool, then you don't understand the tool. That's one of the things I wanted to say. Paul, when should you not use hugelkultur? And obviously, wet tropics is one of them. Because of the decomposition, it's just going to go, right? The other question is, when is it too dry for hugelkultur? Is a situation when it's too dry and then going up, you might not want to go up and have it shed water, but you might want to do some other pattern. I don't know. It's a good question, right? So is there any situation where it would be too dry to do hugelkultur?
I don't think
too wet?
I think if you're, in fact, I've done this one about, 20, 30 times. Well, the problem is that this particular piece of ground is swampy a lot of the year. What do I do? Hugelkultur. Yeah. The problem is this piece of ground that I have is really dry and we only get 4 inches of rain a year. What do I do? Hugelkultur. And it's like, hugelkultur solves all sorts of stuff. So too wet. The only time I could think it might be a problem is if it is a rainforest. Like it's so wet, you have the problem of the tropics, even though you might be in a temperate climate.
Yep.
And it's like, but the other thing is it's like everything keeps growing and you don't, why would you want to take the time to even build a hugelkultur? Mm-hmm. So I think that the people that live in a rainforest aren't asking like, hey, should I build a hugelkultur?
Right.
But I think that the people that are living in places where it's like they water their garden every day.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, let's see if we can save you, 90 to 99% of your water by doing hugelkultur. Here at my place, we got our hugelkulturs on solid rock. And so when I hear people like, oh, my soil's got so much clay, it's impossible to do hugelkultur. It's like, oh, I wish I had solid clay. That'd be great. I could do such great things with that. I have solid rock.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've done miraculous things. Now, the last time you were here, I think we were just starting to put in the well that year.
The well came online when I was there.
Yeah. And so, you went and measured some of our hugelkultur stuff and you're like, oh, it's not very biologically active. But now, because if you're building soil without water, mm-hmm. It is an extremely slow process.
Mm-hmm.
And last year, I think, was the first time we really started to get our irrigation game happening. And we have a soil probe and we test our soil fairly regularly. And we started to see the soil getting really built. We're getting some spots with really black soil now.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have some spots still that are kind of like the stuff that you tested, which we call moon dust.
Yep.
And so because we are on solid rock, but we had that one patch where we could go to what we call a rachis, this I don't know, half acre, quarter of an acre. Yeah, I think it's a quarter of an acre on the lowest spot on our property that's very sandy. It's got a little clay in it, but it's mostly sand. And it's definitely quite sterile. And and we bring up scoops of that and put it in with a bunch of wood, and we got a slowly mixed soil. I've been yammering on for a long time. I can't even remember what the question was. I'm going to pretend we answered the question. Oh, look, and there's a new question. North Central Missouri here. I hope I'm pronouncing, is it Missouri? Or is it, okay, I'm going to pretend I'm pronouncing it correctly.
It's not misery. That's all I
know. Looking forward to making my own hugel bed after the wood ages from the trees blown down in recent tornado. I wouldn't wait. I mean, the only time I might wait is if it's going to be like willow, because then you're going to have a million willow trees. But most wood doesn't take off like that. I would say fresh is fine. I think a big thing is that so many people are like, I want to build the world's most perfect hugelkultur, so I'm going to wait and I'm going to go get the best materials. I think that a better idea is to say, I'm going to build a quick hugelkultur this year, and maybe I'll build a better one next year. It's better to have 20 hugelkultur beds than to have 0, because you're waiting for all of the planets to align or something like that. So I would use it green, unless it's something that's going to just start shooting up a skillion little sprouts of trees, and then you'll never beat that. But I think
for most hardwood species, the antifungal compounds will break down in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'd say, and that a thing that makes me absolutely crazy here in Montana, and I'm sure it's other parts of the world too, is that people feel like their yard is untidy, and they had a bunch of branches fall off, or there was a windstorm and there's a whole tree that's down or whatever, and they burn it. I mean, like in a pile, like in their yard or whatever. And I just kind of feel like, what a horrible waste. And if some people just need things to be tidy all the time, I'd much rather see them make a tidy that is a hugelkultur than to burn it. And then I kind of feel like, okay, if you're going to burn it, how about if you heat your home with it in such a way that it burns cleanly instead of polluting the state? You know, and it's like, to me, it's just maddening to drive into Missoula in the wintertime, and it is just so smoky. And most of it is from people burning brush in their yard, but every once in a while you'll see a house and the chimney is a little teeny tiny chimney, but it's putting out so much smoke, it's just smoked out the whole valley. And it's like, well, that's not a rocket mess heater. All right, I already forgot what the question was. Northeast Kansas here. Hey, this might be for Beau. If a tree dies from a disease and no one's there to hear it, no, wait, it's a different thing.
That's what it sounds like. Sounds like a riddle.
If a tree dies from a disease, would there be any concern of using the wood from that tree in a hugel? Oh, that's a good question. I think I'd use it. I can't even think of what I might be concerned about. I mean, the disease came from nature. I think if somebody poisoned it,
if it's glyphosate disease or something.
Yeah. If somebody used a persistent herbicide, and this is a fairly common problem that I've seen a lot of, where this tree died for no reason. It just got sick and died. And what it actually died from is they sprayed like a broadleaf herbicide.
Right.
You know, something where the grass will live. And it's like, well, that tree, is it a type of grass? No. The tree took up the herbicide and died. And now, if it's a persistent herbicide, or even if it's not a persistent herbicide, it's still in there. I wouldn't want to use that. So natural disease, like no one sprayed anything, I think it's fine. Anybody want to take that one on? Anybody want to counter it?
I wouldn't counter it, but I mean, why was the tree susceptible to disease? You know, was there some low-level toxin in its environment? You know, do you really know? I think if you really know, then maybe that's fine. But the tree was sick for a long time and died. We don't really know what it got into.
If it's on your property, then did you spray it? Probably. Yeah. Probably not. Hopefully
not. Right. Yeah.
Well, if it's a natural disease, trees die all the time, and that's the perfect tree to use in a hugel.
Yep.
What is the lifespan of a tree? Is it 10,000 years, or is it like 80 years? In which case, if you've got 1,000 trees, some of them are going to be dying this year. Wherever you have a plethora of life, you must also always have a plethora of death. It will always be 1-to-1.
Yes. I would say if you're at all concerned about it, just make certain that you have really good biology in your hugelkultur as you go. Really seed it out with really good biology, because it's the good biology. It's like in a natural system, that tree would have fallen down and decayed into the soil, right? Would that sick tree have destroyed the forest? No, it would have fallen down. And if you had good soil biology, it would have quickly, been decomposed and returned into the soil. You're just increasing that soil wood interaction and holding moisture next to it in a hugel, right? So it's a natural process. You're just accelerating it slightly by positioning the wood where you're positioning it.
This podcast is continued in part 2.
In a world on the brink of social collapse, one website stands above the rest to fight back the zombie horde of corporate trolls. Permies.com. Take back control of your destiny and protect your loved ones from the toxic gick coming at you from all directions. Strap on your overalls and start building that bunker of abundance with the good vibes and friendly, helpful insight found at Permies.com.